Yo, yo, yo! Hello, everyone! It's been a while. Let's see if I can remember how to do this anymore. Hey, Anton, welcome back! Where are my audio settings now? Blah, 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 blah. There, probably? Yeah. So, how's the audio levels? Or how are the audio levels? Maybe... Yeah, I think the music is probably quite loud enough. Yeah. Same deal as every time. Let me know if I'm too loud, if I'm too quiet. The music is too loud, all that jazz. So, I haven't been streaming for probably like a month or something, right? I don't even remember last time I did this. And that's kind of deliberate. Took a little bit of a summer break. Went places, did things, that sort of thing. But we're back, and I don't want to wait too long before I start streaming again, because I'm gonna just completely forget how to do this thing if I do that. So welcome back, and we're gonna just keep doing what we do here on this channel, which is pretty much straight game dev. Not a whole lot of other things. But sometimes we do other things. Sometimes we just talk crap. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Let's see if my game actually builds. Let's start with that, shall we? I think it probably should build. Let's just maybe do like a small little rebuild just to be sure. I may be giving the impression that I haven't worked on this for a while, and that's why I'm this confused, but that's actually not true. I've been working on the game every day since last Friday. And so just been doing some decidedly non-zig things lately. Meaning I've been working on the engine, doing one of the things that I've sort of known for quite a while that I need to do. Can you hear me all right, by the way? Do let me know in the chat if you can actually hear what I say. A few times I've started a stream and just yapped on for like 15 minutes before someone has gone in the chat, gone like, are you saying something? And then then I realized that I have my microphone off or something like that. I think it should be good now, but still, do let me know if everything is fine. I have it routed to the right tracks and everything. Yep, looks pretty good. Anyway, yeah, I've been working on the engine for the past few days, trying very hard to wrap up the D3D12 work that sort of got hanging, or was left hanging. As part of the NVRHI porting that I did, you see here, like it's just like a sort of like a brain dump of everything that went into that. And I have a to-do list here, and I finally managed to squash all of these bugs, at least sort of seemingly, One of these things here that I sort of like, I even created an item here because these are things that like I've come across over time. Sort of seems like they're fixed now. Not exactly sure when or how I've fixed some of them, but they kind of seem to be fixed now. And so I guess I'm just gonna have to trust that they are fixed. Let's see if we can run the game. And we can. And we are back here where we normally start. So this is now D3D11. That's gonna remain my sort of home API or fallback API, if you will, for some time still. But I do want to actually make it so that you can run the game pretty nicely with D3D12 as well. I think that's how you enable it, isn't it? GFX API D3D12, yes. Yes, so now you can see D3D12 running here. And yes, hitting my microphone, sorry about that. Very professional start to this streaming business. So, if I'm not mistaken, the game now finally runs sort of without issues in D3D12. And that has taken some work, I tell you. We had some fundamental problems with how the renderer was set up. Sort of fundamental problems with how NVRHI wants you to work and how the engine worked. That only manifested when using D3D12. And if you've been following the Discord today and yesterday, you've seen me rant on about HBAO, which is the AO solution from NVIDIA that I'm using, which actually had some bugs in it that only manifested on AMD cards, including the Steam Deck. And so that was kind of annoying to figure out, because I essentially had to go in and fix NVIDIA's code. Which is kind of surprising that they would have some pretty basic bugs in there. 1 second, I'll be right back. Rightio. But yes, it now runs pretty nicely. It should look exactly the same on D3D12 now. No, there should essentially be no difference. It should look no worse or better on D3D12 than it does on D3D11. I think the loading times for entering these levels are still a little longer on D3D12 than on D3D11. And I kind of think that probably has something to do with the D3D11 driver or runtime or something being like multi-threaded in a way where I would actually have to do like work myself if I want that multi-threading to happen with D3D12. And currently it doesn't happen. Currently I don't do anything like that, so that's probably why that happens. But then once you get into the game itself, it actually runs, I feel, even smoother on D3D12. Which I haven't really been able to like figure out why that is. Or even like definitely if that is, but I kind of, it's just like a feeling, essentially. It's just like a feeling. It just feels smoother, and it might have to do with like some presentation mode or what's it called, like flip mode or something. just feels nicer. So it might even be something that I potentially use on D3D11, but I'm not sure. Yeah, just playing this a little bit here because I haven't really been playing this on D3D12 a whole lot during these past days. Just like essentially started it, verified some bugs, even that the bug is fixed or that it's not fixed, stopped it, changed some code, all of that. So let's actually just play this a little bit here and see if we don't encounter anything super strange. So far it looks pretty good. Hey Nikita, welcome to the stream. Have a good stream. Well, thank you. Thank you. You too, if you stick around. And if you don't, well, have a nice day or evening or morning or whatever it is where you are. So what we are gonna do today is we're gonna actually make it so that you can enable this mode, this D3D12 mode, without resorting to like command line arguments. And most of that work is actually already done. It's just disabled, or it's been disabled for quite a while already. It's interesting that like large box there has. I'm trying to sort of nudge it so that it falls into the bed there, but it's kind of like balancing on the sides. Oh well. Yeah, it's been disabled because like the whole D3D12 runtime has not been in a shape where I have been able to ship it to you guys. So of course, before I went on my summer holiday, I shipped pre-alpha 2, which you can play right now if you join the Discord. And oh, I should probably actually put a link to the Discord in the chat. All right. Let's see about doing that. One of these days I'm gonna remember to like prepare a link beforehand. Like so. There we go. Anyway, yes, you can play this already. Not exactly this build, but the pre-alpha 2 build, which was put out in the start of the summer. And that build does render using NVRHI, but it does not come with a D3D12 backend. And because of that, I had essentially sort of like just disabled the option there. The options menu, we're gonna re-enable it today, and we're gonna add like probably like a warning text to that. That if you have any issues, the D3D12 backend is still somewhat experimental. And then this thing will be available to you in pre-alpha 3, which I hope to put out actually kind of soon. There's a few things that I want to get into pre-alpha 3. D3D12 is one. Mod support, which technically already was in pre-alpha 2. I want to actually release like a modding SDK for you guys. So it's actually not going to be part of pre-alpha 3, but it's going to be releasing along pre-alpha 3. So you can actually make mods for this thing if you want to. I also want to start delivering these things over Steam rather than just as download links. I think that's a little bit clunky. So Steam support is coming, and then probably actually some work in this very level here. There's some sort of asset work needs to be done. So what are we looking at? Let's go to the menu and have a look. See. So we have a we can shut off the music here. We have an options menu with some video options, and notably lacking from this is the ability to select the graphics API, which we should be able to just re-enable essentially. Let's look at that. I'm gonna take away that guy, and hopefully I don't really need that anymore. We'll leave it out from that as well. If we don't give the graphics API as a command line parameter, we can instead read it from the actual honest to God settings. So, where are we here? Let's see, UI, menu, video options menu. It's been a little bit of time since I wrote this, but I think it is mostly done already. So we have set to true or remove completely once we support more than one graphics API. Let's like find that and then actually remove it. And yeah, it's just in one other place. So, setup view. This function is called when we actually go and create that menu, and we add. Yeah, we had a spin box for that graphics API. Actually, we probably add that graphics API spin box from a script. Let's have a look here. If we go to new window and means UI. So we have options menu, view, and we can see here that actually it's video options menu view. You can see that we actually do already create this options menu item. Graphics API, and then we have a localized name here, so that's good. And then we insert it into the list. So it's all actually already created, it's just hidden. Spinbox stack, yeah. Yeah, this AngelScript add-on is a little buggy in that it doesn't actually. It kind of looks like it can't find this thing, add options subtitle menu not defined. Actually, if you go here, you can see that it's here. Options menu, sub menu title is right there. And it compiles just fine, but for some reason it just highlights these. Using these squigglies here, as if it didn't know what it actually was. What's that actually? It's probably actually also found here. Yeah, it's just a small class. Okay. So that's good. So now if we quite simply build this, we should have the box there. Let's have a quick look here at what we actually are dealing with. So spin boxes are put in an enum. Value name must match the widget names in the view. So graphics API must match that one. Graphics API item name is graphics API. And then we actually get the graphics API, which is another enum. And we can see we have D3D11 and 12. I put Vulkan and Metal here, even though we don't really. Well, this game probably will never actually run on those, but it might. I don't know. And then we have a to library name, which is like. We essentially load like different DLLs depending on which graphics API we are using. So it's called basis D3D11 or 12. And these are just like, yeah, I'm guessing it would be called basis Vulkan if I ever do that. And then they have a display name. This is actually not even localized, it's just direct 3D11. No localization here at all. Okay. Means options is probably, where is actually, it's here. Alright, this is the, yeah, this is the file we were actually already in. So this guy has a graphics API member, which is here. Video options. We can see these are the ones that we actually already had there in the menu. So graphics API is initialized to Direct3D 11 and set defaults. Yeah, we got like the name that we will be loading, and then we get the graphics API from the library name. Otherwise, we quite simply write what we have there currently. Init and load is kind of like the same thing, and then save to disk. It's like if we have a graphics API, then we set the string. This config options is kind of like a key value store that gets saved to JSON. So all of this should actually already work. But it was written some months ago when the D3D12 backend wasn't in shape yet. So that's why it has actually never been used. So we're gonna test it out today and see how it works. Rightio. So load the game. This should now load in D3D11. Actually, let's remove another launch argument here. Play level. Take that away. We can even take that one away. Debug console we're gonna probably want to have, and asset server, yeah, it just tells the thing where to actually load the assets, because I'm not running off like pack files here. And let's go to app data. So here we have app data. It's sitting in a folder called Trampoline. Trampoline is sort of like my launcher for games. So we have some screenshots here that I've captured over the months and years. This is actually pretty old stuff. As you can see, this is like the same level as this. So that's that. But yeah, we do have a config. Options config file, options CFG, and this guy contains the graphics API, basis D3D11. Whoop, that's not what I want to do. It's that. Some old crap here. Package control. There we go. So here's where we actually save the basis D3D11 library. So the game. The game knows what to load, and we can't, perhaps unsurprisingly, we can't actually switch this thing during runtime. We need to restart the game if we want to switch graphics API. That's pretty reasonable, I think. But yeah, the engine actually needs this string like way before we even load the like menus and everything. So once we get into the menus, there's really nothing to do, nothing that we can do about the graphics API anymore. We can just write to that file and then ask the player to restart the game. So that's how it works. But if we keep this kind of open here in the background, so to speak, not that, but that. Keep this open here and go into the options. Now we have D3D11. If we go to video options. Still can't see it. Why is that? Why would that be? Let's go here. Let's enable widget bounds debug draw. We can see that. Okay, it is sitting there. It's kind of like behind this thing. It is just for some reason it's still being hidden. What would that be about? Let's go to build.sig. Use debug lib with release game is set to true. So if I build this as debug, it should just work. But it like evidently doesn't. What? There's something else that I'm forgetting here, isn't there? Like if I yeah, I'm getting the spin boxes there. So if we take that thing out, take this graphics API thing out, like that, we should actually get an assert failure. Yes, could not find widget with name graphics API. Absolutely. So it does have it. Why does it not show it? Items in add spinbox stack. It should add everything here, this items array. Wow, that's interesting. Now, of course, there's always the question of like, are we actually building the correct library here? So the basis build release. Look at means game. Yep, the date modified looks correct. How peculiar. Yes, we had that set to false. If set it to true, that should also work, but like just removing it should work equally well. I feel. Huh. Now it is there. What? What? I mean, removing this can't make any difference, right? This check here is only like if we don't have it, then set it to false. It's visible to false. Just remove that, and surely it must be visible. Nothing else makes any sense. Yeah, there it is. I don't know. I must have messed up the building of the library somehow or something. Rightio. Anyway, with that little snafu out of the way, now if we change this to D3D12 and we click apply, we get this sort of message here that you must restart the game to apply all options. I do wonder if this should just say that like you must restart the game to switch graphics API or something. But another thing that I was thinking is like, okay, if we do this, if we if you switch to D3D12 here, you should probably say with like a text here that the D3D12 backend is kind of experimental or something. Please only use it if you know what you're doing, blah blah blah. Well, let's get back to that a bit later. So now we have D3D12. Now if we do indeed start the game again, it should boot with D3D12, and it does. That's nice. So this thing actually works now. We don't need to mess around with the like command line options anymore. And if we now click apply, like we are already on D3D12, so nothing happens. We can even turn off desync, and now we're running at like 400 frames, and everything is good. Okay. Right, so let's just go into depot. Yep. This looks good. And now we can see that this is actually changed. So that's kind of neat. Okay, how do we show that message box then? This is something I made like a few months ago. So I should have it in somewhat fresh memory, but not quite. So needs game restart. Defaults to false. And we read the graphics API, only save if not unknown. Yeah, I don't think we have anything like an unknown graphics API here, so I don't know what that comment is referring to. Let's take that away. Anyway, if the value that we get from the sort of selected value is not means.options.graphics API, so the one that we currently are using, if they're not the same, then we do the needs game restart thing. And I think the game needs restart. Yeah, it just shows one button dialog with a callback. Do apply changes. And then do apply changes actually goes and okay, only save if not own. It actually refers to that one. Yeah, okay, we can maybe keep it there then. Let's just keep it there. After all, you must reset the game. Yeah, here's some old crap. This is probably how I was originally sort of showing myself that yes, okay, I changed it now. The system realized that it has changed. So we can just take that away. Good. And right, so show one button dialog is the thing that shows that, well, that dialog of ours. And what we could do here is, like, if we're passing it like a secondary text, then it would show it here. Let's switch back to D3D11 just to get this thing to show. Must restart the game to apply all options. You can have like a secondary text with like a slightly smaller font or something like that that shows here in like this yellow or whatever. Wouldn't that be kind of nice? I think it would. So let's see, how did this dialogue system work now then? Show one button dialog. Like it pushes a modal view onto the stack. And the fact that it is modal, like this word here is important because it means that it pushes it in such a way that like nothing else can come on top of this. Or well, another modal window or modal view can come on top of this. Well, basically it means that like if you push a modal view onto the stack, then the dialog, which is the modal view, stays on top even though we push some other, like if this happens and now like the menu there in the background changes, it doesn't actually go on top of this guy because this is a modal view. So modal views are currently only used for dialogues, right? If that makes sense. Which I think it does, and so let's have a look here if I can remember how this actually works. We're now in the UI dialog module. We acquire a view, one button dialog. What does this do? Dialog type. Right, so it sort of like reuses the views. And if we don't have a view, then we create a new one. We create a view, we append it to views, and then we return the view. Okay. And we create specifically, yeah, we create it here by the type. And if we have a one button dialog, which is like this one here, it creates it using this script path. So we can go and have a look here. We can see game UI view scripts dialog one button AS. So Angel script. And if we go here, we can see that we have here, this is the thing. So if you want like one more line of text here, we can create another label like this. And that's it, basically, right? Let's see if that actually works when the game is running. I'm not sure it will. And it might. So if we go options, video options, apply, then we keep this open here and go and mess with this guy. Let's create another label. We call this like sub label, and we move it down a little bit, something like that. Raw text, hello. Hey, look at that. Right, so the name changes here to label and button, and that's because we're not really initializing this dialog with anything right now, right? But yeah, that kind of works. Let's see. So with skin, I think this thing actually has like, yeah, it has a color right here. There's the color. So if we want to make this sub label, first of all, I want to make the font maybe slightly smaller. Hello. And then the color, that sort of yellowish thing. I think we actually need to get the skin here from this one, right? UI menu skin. Yep. Right, so here's a render button. That would be one of these things, for example, or this. So this yellow here might be kind of nice. I'm losing my voice a little bit here. Let's drink a little water. So let's see. Where's the text rendering for the buttons? Here's one. Fill color, glow color, text color. Text color, I think, is the one we want. Oh, that's white. here we go. I think that's probably it. Alpha is 255. Yeah, let's use that. So that should be like a nice yellow, shouldn't it? Yeah, it's a little dark though. It's a little dark. And we have a nice slightly brighter one here then. Yeah, we're just taking this. So we have a glow. I think this glow is, yeah, just a sine wave here. So stud math sin. That makes this button sort of glow like that. You can like perhaps see it, even though it's pretty subtle. Makes the button glow, and we could of course take this, sort of just calculate what this glow thing would be. So the maximum glow would be 50. So we would take that plus 50, that plus 50, and that plus 50, and that will give us the maximum glow that we have. Would that make sense? Maybe. So like 254, and that would be 222, right? And that would be 141. Yeah. Let's use those. See what that gives us. Yeah, so that is like the brightest. That though might be a little too bright. It's almost like brighter now than this label thing here. So let's tone it down a little bit. Let's bring that down to 20 less. Yeah, that looks better, but I think it's still a little too bright. Yeah. That's probably better. So, if we click the button here, nothing happens because I think the sort of event has been unhooked there. When we hot updated that view, but we can do it again. Now we have, must reset the game to apply all options. Hello. I was thinking we might want to actually move this thing down a little bit, but now that I look at this, I think it actually looks kind of neat. I think we're just going to want to move this text upwards ever so slightly. Ever so slightly. It's maybe like 43. Is it? I think it's 43. Yeah, that looks better. So now if we do like, this is what I'm essentially imagining here, like, you know, the direct 3D12 backend is still experimental. Please revert to using the 3D11 if you have any issues. That might be too long. Might be too long, but it also might be okay if we sort of bring it down a little bit. Please use. Or maybe please note that. Something like that, right? So now if we, it wouldn't of course show that if we went back to D3D11, but if we go like this, D3D12, please note that D3D12 backend is still experimental. Or maybe render, is what it should say. Render. I keep hitting the wrong button there. There we go. Something like that. And then the D3D12 renderer will stay experimental for, you know, a little bit until people report to me that yes, it is actually kind of working. I'm just gonna copy that somewhere else. So if I want to use it, we have it there. So this would be sub-label. And then, of course, we want to be able to set this text, but only if you actually pass it like a string or text or something. You want to show that. If you don't give it anything, if you give it like an empty string as a sub-label, we want the view to hide that, because otherwise it will look like this. Like this. Sub-label. Or well, I guess technically if you give it an empty string it just won't show anything, so that might actually work. Yeah, that might work. Probably don't need to hide it. But still, we need to set that text, so let's do that. How do we do that? I don't remember anymore. UI dialog. Show 2 button dialog, show 1 button dialog. So, right, we have message text localized. So we would have message subtext and message subtext localized. The reason I'm giving this as a boolean here is that I don't want to parse anything like I'm using like parsing in some places here, that like if you start with, I think it's like with an exclamation mark, and then don't stop with an exclamation mark, and that means it's localized. Something like that. But I didn't want to actually use that here, so you pass the thing, and then you tell it, is this actually like an ID for something that gets localized somewhere else. So let's see. DLG label, right? What's label? Label is that. So let's give it a sub label, which is of type Goofy. Goofy, of course, being my UI system, and we initialize it to null. So, like by default, it doesn't have it. And let's have a look here. So, 1 button dialog, sub label. It's essentially the same as we have here. Get and assert. So Goofy UI label pointer sub label. Like so, and then this thing is optional. The message text is essentially sort of like not optional, right? But the message subtext is optional. So first of all, we want to check here if message subtext.len is larger than 0, then then we know that we actually have something. If it's not, then we just do DLG sublabel set raw text, and we set it just to an empty string, right? So that is what I spoke about earlier, the fact that we essentially like hide it by just giving it an empty string. And that would be subtext, not text. So subtext, and subtext. So if we have a subtext, we check is the subtext localized, then we set localized text, otherwise we set raw text. And what this actually means, I will get to in just a second. I think that's all we need to actually show that text there. Then we just need a little bit of logic there in the video options menu for that. Right. Right, okay, we need to add those here as well. Now, if we were really fancy about it, we could do something like an optional. Oh, that's not an optional. That's an optional. But then that would also have to be an optional, sort of like to make it make any sense. So I think we're just gonna leave them as like, if we don't want the subtext, you just leave that as empty. That will work just fine. So like so, and then we do subtext and subtext localized. Oh, that's the wrong place. There we go, that's where we want it. So message text is message text, localized, and then the subtext, then the button text, and the callback. There we go. Cool. So here then, subtext comes here, and then we set it to false, so that it's not localized for now. So now if we run this, it should look the same as it did previously. Change that. I must restart the game to apply all options. Blah blah blah. Set it back to here. Nothing happens. Okay. Now, if we need to restart the game, that currently means that we have changed the graphics API, because there's nothing else that actually sets this guy now. So if that is the case, then we know that the user has gone and changed that. And so in here we can quite simply, let's add a comment here. Currently the only thing that needs the game to restart is changing the graphics API. Actually, that's not true. If you want to change which mods are loaded and the order they're loaded in, you need to restart the game as well. But that's actually not done through the options menu. So for our purposes here, the comment actually is true. And so here we can do, let's see, that's a spin box pointer. From it we get the graphics API. So we need those two lines. This val here now is basically like which graphics API we just selected. So if we do subtext is if val is D3D12, then it is something else, it is something else. And then we use the subtext here. So currently we have this subtext localized set to false still. We're going to want to set it to true when we actually have a string for it. So here I've set it to true, and then the string we pass to it is sort of like an ID into a localization database, right? So we're going to look at that in a second. But currently here we can take this fancy little string that we prepared. So subtext is if we are switching to D3D12, then we show that. If not, then we just show an empty string. Because we don't need to warn about going back to D3D11. Necessarily. Alright, so we're now running on D3D12. If we switch to D3D11, we just get this no subtext. But if we switch to D3D12, we also don't get it. Okay, why is that? Why is that? Let's do a basis print f val is print the string. Whoa. Val. All right. Yeah, we can either get the type tag or tag name, or we can take the s away. Let's print the subtext as well. And this will require an s there. So let's see what we get. Video options. Whoop. So D3D11, and subtext is empty, and we do actually expect that. And now we get it. Val is D3D12. Please note that my D3D12 render is still experimental. Okay, why does it not show then? Why does it not show? It's passed on. Oh, label. Yeah, it's shown there. Okay, that's not good. We want it to be shown on the sub-label. There we go. Yeah, sub-label and label. Good, so that's better. Access denied is probably because, alright, I still had it running. Okay then. So yeah, that's good. And then that one is a. So that's neat. Okay. Now of course, if we switch the language to like Swedish, and then we need to toggle this a few times to see that again. It says this main thing in Swedish, but it says this still in English. So how do we make that localized? And the way I've done that is by using an Excel sheet, good old Excel sheet. To manage my localization strings. Means localization is right here. Please open it, thank you. Now we can see here, you must restart the game to apply all options. So we can quite simply insert one more row, and we can do a text UI D3D12 experimental notice. Something like that, right? And then we take this, the same string we had. Like so. What do we have that's that long? Okay, some intro text there. And then I will quickly come up with something random in Swedish. I don't even know. Like I speak Swedish out of all of these languages that I have here. So these are like the, what's it called, like effigs. Yeah, effigs is the like standard English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. But I don't speak any of these 4 languages. I only speak English and Swedish. So I added Swedish here just to have something to actually test with, right? But like most of these Swedish texts are just like super sort of clunky. But it doesn't matter. Right, so now we have this text UI D3D12 experimental notice. We shut that down. And we can go into the asset browser. Localization is right here. Explore to that. This is actually where that file is found that we just edited. But I need to run this batch file to generate the new data in a way where we can actually read it from the game. So if we go to we can diff that, we can see that we have a new string here with a key and then a value for the English one. And you get that for all the languages. Except like in German, for example, that thing would be empty, or it would just say missing because we don't actually have that thing. I don't have the German translation for that. But now we can do, instead of that, we can just add that text there, and we can set that to true. If we don't set it to true, you will actually see this text UI D3D12 experimental notice in the UI, which is obviously not what you want. Right, so still running in Swedish. Just test this out quickly. Right, so no notice there. And I will switch to D3D12. Super clunky Swedish there, but whatever. I'm not necessarily even gonna release this in Swedish. Well, I guess technically I already have, because you can play the Pre-Alpha 2 in Swedish if you really want to. But now, please note that the D3D12 render is still experimental. Yes. Thank you, game. And if you switch back to D3D11, you're just told that okay, you need to restart it. So now if we restart it, we should have D3D11 again. Which we do. Hey, ain't that cool? I think I'm gonna keep it on D3D12 though. At least for a little while now, because I'm kind of hoping that I will eventually be able to just like switch to it completely. Everything should basically be working. I think everything except the screen capturer. If you want to like record a video or even a screenshot using the renderer's own like internal systems, I don't think those work with D3D12 yet. But that's basically the only thing that doesn't work. That's just because I haven't implemented that. But everything else should be working. but it just kind of like hasn't been tested very well. So D3D12, cool. Let's load the intro level. There's a level that I don't hang around very often in because there's essentially only supposed to be like a like an intro cinematic here, and you can even see the vehicles here from the intro. They're standing here in sort of standby. And if we run a script camera animation, is that actually? Yeah, okay. This is an animation that actually isn't used in the intro. Not exactly sure what will happen when this thing ends. And you can see it sort of panning. I'm not actually doing anything right now. The camera sort of just follows a spline, I think, here. Yeah, and then it just ends. Okay. Regardless, these are the vehicles that actually are used in the intro. And you see these guys driving along this road when you start a new game. They're just scripted to drive along the road. They are sort of proper actual vehicles still. There's actually not like a whole lot in this level. Just like this small piece of land, and these kind of mysterious towers here. Like most people probably don't even really necessarily realize that they are. There's like more of them. There's one over there. There's one here. There's actually a couple more here. And they have like a whole narrative thing. But I think we are actually gonna fall through the ground if we keep driving this way. Yeah. Ooh. Oh no. Switch to this guy. So the motor vehicle is still using this new slightly wonky but very sort of effective and maneuverable wheel setup, where all four wheels are steering, or all eight, I should say, all four sort of axles of wheels are steering, which means that it does cornering much tighter now than it did previously. This is actually not even submitted. I just keep it, or I've kept it over the summer locally on this machine. But I'm not like super. I'm not 100% sold on this thing, but it actually is. It's kind of nice to drive around this thing because it turns almost on a dime now. But I have a plan for the mother. I'm hoping to actually switch out its wheel model for something more suitable for such a large vehicle. And that may or may not actually go into pre-alpha 3. We're gonna have to see about that. Basically, you have like, if you have things like this, you have a ledge like this. You can see that it sort of like goes into the ground a little bit, the wheel there. And that's just because like these wheels are so ridiculously large. This tire model here isn't really designed for wheels that are this huge. And so we probably need a more detailed one. anyway, I'm hoping this is actually sort of like everything we need to do for D3D12 for now. Remains to be seen how well this works. It is entirely possible that I will run into some catastrophic issue with D3D12 and it won't ship in pre-alpha 3. But I'm hoping that like after almost half a year of, well, after half a year since I made the original D3D12 sort of code or started integrating it here, it is now finally properly usable for everyone. At least it looks pretty good, and I might add D3D12 runs a fair bit faster on AMD cards, so things like the Steam Deck, than D3D11 ever did, which is super nice. Some actual benefit from doing all of this honestly pretty large amount of graphics API work for this thing. So, what should we do? What should we do next? It's been awfully quiet in the chat today. Might be that people are still on holiday, or it's just I don't know, bad day to stream for some reason. That's fine. I essentially, well, at least typically, I kind of stream with some intention of actually doing work. And so that is sort of like the most important thing is that I get work done, but it's of course also very cool to discuss things with you guys. So feel free to ask me, don't be shy. But sometimes it is just a very slow stream. That can't be helped. Maybe today is one of those days. It's also possible. So one thing that we might be able to do, or at least get started on today, is a way to enter the sandbox mode. Because if you go to the main menu, we have start new game, we have load game, we have options, and we have exit. And depending on my mood, I might also have a multiplayer button there. Let's see, pre-alpha menu limitations. In the pre-alpha 1 version, the MP button is hidden. Yeah, that is probably going to be the case for like quite many pre-alphas. I can set that to false. And I need to build still. We actually do have the very beginnings of a multiplayer mode implemented, and looks like this. This is using like the age-old built-in level or menu system from the game engine itself. It looks super crude. This is now like technically this is now a LAN game. I know it looks basically exactly the same as before. I think that the most visible way to actually see this now is that like if I pause the game actually doesn't pause. So it shouldn't even say paused. It should just say like menu or something. I can even keep driving this thing. Yeah, as you can see, this is kind of clunky still. And I don't even know if this thing is gonna actually ship. ever if this game is gonna have multiplayer, but you can play at least some kind of like multiplayer where you can like drive around and nudge people off the road. That is possible. I've done that quite a bit with my kid. It's been fun until it inevitably crashed. Because again, not very solid yet. Yeah, you can't even drive this menu with the gamepad. You have to click out of there. But anyway, that's that. But I was thinking that sooner or later we're gonna want to have a sandbox menu item there. And that's something that we might even want to put into pre-alpha 3. Because currently if you want to go into like a sandbox game, you need to basically go through this this development menu and then select a level from here. Castle level, for example. There's a bunch of like test levels here. This is how you enter like a level which is not sort of part of a mission, part of the campaign or whatever. This is not just like the raw level without any sort of scripting or anything. And you can still play it, drive around in it, typically. But it would be pretty nice to have an actual menu where you could like enter these levels like this, mess around with them, especially when we get far enough that we actually have like a level editor for you guys. Which you know I could just release it tomorrow if I wanted to, but I don't think I want to do quite that. Yeah, that's one thing that we could do today. Just put in that sandbox menu item there, and then of course behind that there needs to go an actual menu. And menus tend to take quite a long time to make. But like, I guess we could, in theory, make it load into levels from there. But I don't know, maybe that actually like requires a little bit of design work to get that working nicely. So maybe that's not really what I want to do. Let's go driving here. These things have collision. Yes. Yes, they do. Then we can just take them away. Bye-bye gate. I think this level is just gonna end. Oh. Oh no. Okay. Right, so this is probably a separate terrain, this little hill here. So it didn't even have collisions. Rightio. Rightio. Well, yeah, we need some nicer, more sort of user-friendly list than this IMGUI list here. There's a mini game that I made on video quite a while ago, actually. It's like a scripting test, essentially. You collect 3 of them, and then you get a nice fire going there in the middle. I think you can still actually restart this thing. Yeah, go. It's cool that this still works. I haven't really paid much attention to this thing in a while. Bonk. crane development. What is that? Oh, okay. It's just a way to be able to test this out clearly. That's not super interesting. BVH test. This is clearly something that doesn't really make any sense without any debug visualizations here. Raw mesh BVH. I bet this is the thing. It's just testing how that works. Okay. Lots of objects. Right, okay. So this is like a physics/network test. For the aforementioned multiplayer, if that ever materializes. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is the very first level that we had. Oh, yeah, we need to refresh the entire track map. It's the very first level that we ever had. Some of the very first development videos for this game a couple of years ago were in this level here. And this is the level where this very vehicle was born. Where I was testing out how to make a vehicle this ridiculously large with physics. And yeah, still here, still loads. That's pretty neat. All right, folks. It's so slow today that maybe I'll actually call it a night for today. And I did get my D3D12 work done. I think I can. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm sort of thinking that I can probably actually like consider that done for now, until it inevitably fails or breaks somehow. But I have a hope that I can actually now ship D3D12 after this in pre-alpha 3, which I hope to put out in about a month. So that's neat. Hard work finally paying off, and maybe I can stop switching graphics APIs finally. This thing has run on D3D11, 12, metal, Vulkan, a few different flavors of Vulkan, and Wave GPU. And I think that with Proton and everything working as well as it does, I can probably just ship D3D11 and 12. And that should be really nice, because it seems to work pretty nicely. Are you not satisfied with the implementation of DX12 in NVRHI? I'm quite happy with it, yes. I'm quite happy with it. It is what you are looking at right now, I might add. So yeah, there's some sort of misunderstanding. I don't know what I have said that made you think I wasn't happy with it. I've had some pretty big issues with the D3D12. And so, like, basically as of today, I think they have all been fixed. I have essentially just like a few things that I'm like issues that I can't really reproduce anymore. So I think they probably have been fixed. I'm just not exactly sure how, but they've been pretty small. Things like the auto exposure being a little wonky, but I can't for the life of me reproduce that anymore. So I think it has something to do with like scissor rectangles being wrong, and I fixed a bunch of bugs with that. And then I have the screen recorder, which is just like not implemented with D3D12 yet. So that's still to be done. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty happy. Works pretty well. It has taken quite a lot of work. Like, I ported to NVRHI in, was it March? And I did it with the. It was a lot of work to port to NVRHI. First of all, I think I ported to NVRHI from my own RHI in about a month. That was like a month of like 8 to 10 hour days every single day, just porting over the thing, right? And at the end of that, I had it working on D3D11 with some bugs. Like, I had to go back and fix some bugs, obviously, and things like that. But D3D11 was working, and I didn't really think that it would work out of the box on D3D12, but like it very, very definitely has not worked out of the box on D3D12. I've had to do a lot of work. Some people think that like you plug in something like NVRHI, then just automatically works, and that is not the case. Let's see, I was trying to understand what exactly we were having trouble with and what you were trying to do. Okay, so well, I can go into as much detail as you want, essentially. What I was trying to do is easy. I was trying to get it to feature parity with D3D11. And essentially nothing more. The game has now, except for that one screen recorder, which still isn't done and probably won't do for a little while because it's not super high priority. Except for that, we now have feature parity with D3D11, and it looks basically exactly the same. And especially on AMD hardware, it runs a fair bit better on D3D12, which is nice. But that's what I was trying to do. Nothing fancy, just like get it running on D3D12, just the same features as D3D11. So now then, what I was having trouble with, so many things. If you want to, I can go through that. especially what I've been working on for the past day or so, or a few days. I'm gonna go get a glass of water and then I can briefly run through this thing. So, I'm gonna assume you kind of know a little bit about NVRHI. But if you don't know, I have actually a whole video on this thing. But just quickly, it's a layer on top of D3D11, 12, and Vulkan, and it makes working with D3D12 and Vulkan sort of like a how should I put this? It brings them closer to D3D11 in many ways. You don't have to do like well, we can just read the list here. My brain is just fried after a long day of working. You don't have to do resource stage and barriers. You don't have to track lifetimes. Those are probably like the really big ones, right? Because these are things that synchronization and like resource states and lifetime tracking are like the big things that that you have to do if you move just from 11 to 12 directly, right? Well, there's actually quite a few small things that you have to take care of when moving from D3D11 to 12 when you're using NVRHI. So, something that was kind of like surprising to me was that I got a lot of issues with viewports and scissor rectangles. See if I can remember some good place that this would have been like an issue with. Like okay. We have a mod here, which I can probably show to you. You can actually see this on a previous stream that I did, where I was like, what is going on? Why is this not working? So this is a mod. This is a WebAssembly mod. This is what you will be able to this is how you will be able to mod the game. So this is an example mod that I did. And this thing has these kind of crudely drawn, but still, yeah, there's no sound here, unfortunately. But this is a flying car, basically. So it completely breaks the missions and everything. If you pause the game, you just fly around this guy here. Previously on stream, I was messing around with this thing, and I actually didn't realize I was running on D3D12 at the time, so evidently it worked kind of okay. But the scissor rectangle for the bloom was all messed up. Even though it works on D3D11 and you set it on, exactly the same way because you're setting it through NVRHI code on both D3D11 and 12, the scissor rectangle was like a small little thing here in the corner. Actually, maybe it covered like half the screen or something like that. But the point is that like on that stream, like one of those thrusters was essentially like missing the bloom, and it just looked super weird. And it's not really a difficult thing to fix once you figure out what the problem is, right? The problem is that like it's very sort of non-obvious what is the problem when you see something like that, because the viewport works correctly on D3D11, and you're not using any sort of like, you're not, you know, pulling the rug from underneath NVRHI and just doing a lot of D3D11 calls yourself. It's just that like there are some differences between D3D11 and D3D12 with NVRHI, and I've found that like viewports and scissor rectangles are one such thing where like you need to be a lot more like explicit with them with D3D12. So that's one thing, and I've had like so many of those. It's kind of probably tells something about my code base that I haven't been very explicit about viewports and rectangles. That's been one thing, and I've been spending time in RenderDoc trying to find them. Let's see. I used NRI like a year ago. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's sort of like a sister project to NVRHI as far as I know. And after I've done some things, I found that you and Cherner started using NVRHI. It means for me that I took a wrong turn somewhere. I don't know. I don't necessarily know that you took a wrong turn. I think NRI is actually like it's a slightly lower level abstraction than NVRHI. I think it like NVRHI tries to, you know, make it easier to work with these APIs. I think NRI kind of like doesn't necessarily try to make it easier to work with them, but it tries to like unify Vulkan and D3D12. I think that's kind of like the point of NRI. You don't need to write necessarily like separate rendering paths for those two APIs. You can write just one, and like that is indeed the like idea behind NVRHI as well. But NVRHI is definitely trying to like make it just like easier to work with the new graphics APIs, and that is why I appreciate NVRHI a lot. Fun fact, actually, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle uses NRI, at least for something, because they're like shipping some like DLLs and something with it. I don't know exactly what it's used for, but clearly it's being used for things. Thinking about giving NVRHI a second chance. Absolutely. I highly recommend NVRHI. Like, you know, if you're working enough with one of these libraries, even though it's a very, very good library, you kind of get like a love-hate relationship with it. It's sort of like inevitable, because like these things just sort of start annoying you for seemingly no reason. So even though I kind of sound a little harsh sometimes, like NVRHI is like definitely like my favorite graphics API, if you want to call it that. So yes, take my criticisms with a grain of salt. Anyway, I'm trying to remember if I had some other. I think I had some other. Yeah, I had like not a number of issues, some like shaders. You can actually see on the very first stream. Like, fun fact, actually, I started working on D3D12, on the D3D12 backend for this on stream, and it was just like hilariously broken in so many ways. So that's another thing that I had, but I managed to fix those pretty quickly. The like biggest issue I have had with NVRHI and D3D12 is kind of like of my own making, but also kind of like because of how NVRHI works with D3D12. So let's see if I can show you this. And this took actually like, this is the reason why it's taken me so long to actually figure out D3D12 support for bases, because this thing was just freaking not easy to figure out at all. So listen to me carefully if you want to target NVRHI with D3D12 now, because this is something that like worked just flawlessly with D3D11 and just like did not work at all with D3D12. This is something that I show you in my rendering with NVRHI video, that I get a crash and I run out of descriptor heap space. And it's sort of like an easy fix. I know like I knew after maybe like an hour or two, I knew what the problem was. But my own renderer was like written in a way that made it super tricky to fix, essentially. What I'm trying to find here is right, this. Creating a graphics pipeline, this section here. So, the way you bind things to shaders in NVRHI, unless you're using bindless, right? Let's get that like right off the bat. Let's mention bindless here. If you're using bindless, this probably doesn't concern you at all, and this kind of makes me want to try bindless at some point. Except I kind of have to ditch D3D12 at that point, so I'm not doing that yet. But yeah, if you're using bindless, then I've never tried that. It's probably much easier. But if you're using the classical sort of binding mechanism, which both I think the tutorial and the programming guide mention here. Yes, binding layouts and sets. So, D3D12 uses like slots. You just bind things to slots. D3D12 has a bunch of different ways you can bind things to, like, direct it to your root signatures, or you can use like descriptor heaps. And there's also sort of like a middle ground between those two. But anyway, the idea here is that if you're using NVRHI, you create something called oh, that's actually not at all what I want. It is where is it? It's called binding layout and binding set. Here we go. Binding layout. So yeah, this comes before creating the resources. You create a binding layout, and you tell it, okay, so this binding layout will be used to create a binding set. And a binding set is essentially like a bunch of resources that you bind to a shader. So it can be, you know, it can be textures, it can be constant buffers. This is a volatile constant buffer, but it's essentially a constant buffer that you can write many times too. But you know, textures, buffers, UAVs, and samplers. Those are, I guess, like the main ones. And the first thing you do is you create a layout, so binding layout, using a binding layout description, and then you create a binding layout. And then later on, you create a binding set. So let's find that as well. Create binding set is right here. And for this, you also have a description. And here you actually bind, like previously when we created the layout, we just told it that, okay, to slot 0, we're going to bind a texture. So that would be like in HLSL, that would be T0 register. And then to B0, because this is a buffer, we're going to bind the constant buffer. And here you're actually giving it like, this is the texture, and that is the constant buffer. And then you're giving it the layout that you created previously. And you get the binding set description, and this gives you a binding set. And this guy here, this is the thing that you can then bind to the actual pipeline. So if we look for this binding set, you can find it here. Here where we, just before we call draw, we just go add binding set to the graphics state. Okay? This is sort of like the classical way you bind things in NVRHI. And with D3D12, this is sort of like, you don't really need to think about this any more than this. You kind of just go, oh, okay. Previously I used to bind to slots directly, and I have basically the same thing here. When you're creating the layout, you're setting the slot here, texture at slot T0, and constant buffer to B0, right? These are the same slots that you feed it in D3D12. And then you repeat the same thing here. And yes, you have to do it in two places. There's like a little bit of a defensive like mention about that here somewhere. That like you have to do it in two places, because then the system can sort of verify that you're you're binding the correct things, blah blah blah. But anyway, this binding layouts and sets here explains this in more detail, how that works. Now, the problem is that, like, basis, when you create something, let's create a freaking mother vehicle here, for example. Boom. So this guy now created probably like, I don't know, 20 different materials on the fly that it didn't have previously. And these materials, they typically use samplers. So let's go have a look here at, for example, the mother vehicle chassis. Node material. Right here. So this is a material variant which references the mother chassis diffuse texture, but is based on this well, this base material here. So it's using the same shader that this creates. It just replaces this fallback texture with the actual texture that's used to render this thing. And this uses a sampler. It has a linear, oh, I actually changed that now. Linear wrap sampler to sample the diffuse texture, right? If we look at it here somewhere, actually it's probably, oh, it's right there. Never mind. So this is the code that gets generated. So this guy, basis sampler. This is now the updated code where the issue is fixed. But previously, what I did here was I just like I have this texture here, texture 2D, node graph texture 0. I had like a sampler next to this. I can't actually modify this thing. If we just take that out of there and place it here, I have this auto bind keyword here, which just basically like generates a binding for it, but it was called something like sampler, and then it had like G texture sampler or whatever, like this. And if you author your materials like this, in such a way that you have your material system figure out, okay, what do we have in the shader? Oh, we have a texture here, and we have some samplers, and then we need to bind those to the pipeline, and then it generates a binding set description like this, and then it binds, adds the texture here, adds the buffer here, and then it adds the sampler as the third one. If you do that, and then you throw just a bunch of materials on it, you're gonna be probably creating like a couple hundred materials, and then you're gonna crash. Because if we go into the NVRHI code, let's have a look. This ended up being kind of a rant. I'm sorry, but it's probably best that I just tell you and show you what happened. So, in NVRHI, when you create a binding set, let's see if we can find it. Resource bindings D3D12. I think this is the one actually. Yes, right here. Binding set create descriptors. Where's that call from? Right here. Here we go. Create binding set. So this is the call. Create binding set is the same call that we had here, right? You now have your resources ready to go. You want to create the binding set so that you can bind it to the pipeline. Call this guy, which calls create descriptors. This thing does a bunch of things, figures out what is in the thing, but then we have this if statement here. And this has been like the bane of my existence. It looks, and it has already figured out at this point, okay, do we have any samplers? So is this descriptor table size sampler larger than 0? and it goes into M resources sampler heap, which is a almost like global data in a way, because this thing comes from device resources. And device resources, I think, is just, yes, here we have all the heaps, static descriptor heap, and one of these guys live on the device. I think there's only one. All right, here we go. Device resources. There we go. So what is this? This is the device, and it has one of these guys, right? So this is essentially like a global. This is essentially global data, because we only have one device typically, right? Anyway, we're back here, and we have figured out, okay, we have samplers. Sampler heap, allocate descriptors. This guy will go in here, and it will try to allocate. At some point, it's gonna figure out, okay, I don't actually have any, you know, contiguous range of indices for the samplers you want. We're gonna need to grow it. We go in here and we grow it, and we call allocate resources. So we now have a new size. We figure out, okay, how much do we want to actually grow the thing with, and then we call new allocate resources. And this thing we'll call create descriptor heap with the new size. This is where I crashed, and the reason I crashed is because, let's see if we can find this exact number. D3D12. Oh, D3D12. Shader visible sampler max count. I think is like, well, AI says it's 2048, but I think that is actually true. Oh, actually, I think I have the error message right here. Yeah, so this is the error message. Let's copy that into here, and we can see, look at it. So this is the error that I got. Create descriptor heap with 4096, but the limit for shader visible sampler heaps is 2048, right? And depending on how you bind those things, and if you have, you know, how you assign them to slots, etc., there might be like a little bit of waste every now and then with like how many of those descriptors it needs to allocate, right? If for some reason you have a shader that allocates that has like a sampler at slot 0 and sampler at slot 2, it needs to actually allocate like 3 descriptors, right? Because it has like 0, 1, and 2. And so you need to be very careful with how you lay out your samplers in your shaders. Otherwise, if you just like create those binding sets willy-nilly and just add samplers to them, you're gonna crash. So this was my big problem, and this took like a pretty long time to actually figure out, okay, how do I actually want this to work? And the way I fixed it is very simple, and it's like it was the first idea that I had of how to fix it, and it turned out to be the way I fixed it in the end. Unless it turns out that it doesn't work after all and I need to fix it some other way, but like so far it seems to work pretty well. I introduced something called fixed sampler bindings, and this is like on like the shader compiler level. This is something that like even the shader compiler needs to know about, because the shader compiler is the one that assigns those slots, right? So here we have shader compiler, which is essentially sort of like just like a front end for DXC or FXC or GL slang or whatever you're compiling to. So here we have binding resolver, and this thing assign new slots. This is like responsible for figuring out if you have this, you have this auto bind texture 2D thing here. We need to actually expand this to something. Actually, I have a comment up here. It's not here. It's actually in shader preprocessor. I'm sorry, this is long. I'm almost done. So we're looking for lines like this, and then we have some auto bind lines, and we're expanding them into lines like this. So we're expanding them into both like a GLSL layout set binding pair and like a register pair. This is what it actually like gets turned into. And of course, we need to like assign these automatically in such a way that they don't overlap, and that for D3D11 they need to be sort of arranged per shader stage. All sorts of fun things that like the graphics APIs want. And so assign new slots is the thing that like actually goes in and generates these things. And here the new thing is that like this knows about fixed sampler bindings. So fixed sampler bindings just means that like if we have encountered a sampler, so you know, register type S, if we are using fixed sampler bindings, we are actually getting them from like just a list of bindings. So we get a register slot and we get a binding slot, and it's matching them up by name. If we don't use fixed sampler binding, we just do the classical thing where we just like increment it so that we get nice sort of incremented values there. So this is like at the very lowest level how it works, and it goes all the way up through, you know, like the shader compiler, the converters, the material needs to know about this, and then finally the runtime, because we have this standard sampler bindings header here, and these are all the sort of standard samplers that I create when the engine starts up. And you can actually see here in this code that we generated here. Go in here and see where we actually sample the thing. It's in the yeah, it's pixel shader, so it's here. Sample texture node, that would be this guy here. It's using linear wrap, and you can see that it's now sampling using __ basis sampler _ and then linear wrap. And this is one of those standard samplers. It's no longer just like figuring out, oh, you have a sampler in the code, let's add it to the binding set. No, because that way you're gonna crash. So instead we use one of the standard ones, and they are always bound at a fixed place. So with the registers, we're starting at register 4, so we can, in theory at least, have a few other samplers, you know, at the start. Basically 4 of them. And with the bindings, because the bindings, this is like the GLSL style bindings, we just started 24 because like the bindings all go in the same sort of, you know, binding type. It's just a slot. So that's how this works. Now we have a fixed set of slots that we know that, okay, at the sampler, because we're mainly concerned with HLSL here, D3D12 and all of that, we know that like at, you know, start index 4 plus 0, so 4, at slot 4 we always bind the point trap sampler. At 5 we always bind the point clamp sampler, and so on. And then when we actually bind the thing, if we go to material, for example, let's make the code a little smaller so I can actually see what I'm doing here. So material create, we're iterating over the render passes. So the render pass is something like, you know, opaque, transparent, shadow map, that sort of thing. We get the shader either from like embedded into the material, or from just a shader file. Still we acquire it, and this shader program description knows, do we have fixed sampler bindings? So when the shader compiled this, did it actually put those samplers at fixed slots? And if it did, then we get a layout and a set. And this is the important part. We're always getting the same layout and the same set for this. So get standard samplers layout. This thing is actually created when the engine starts up, and it outlives any and all materials. You see here. Create the all samplers binding layout and set. And here you can even do like some NVRHI things. Like you don't need to track liveness for these things, because the samplers will outlive all the render commands. And then we just iterate over them and we add them to the layout, and then we add them to the set, and we create the layout and create the set, you know, up front, because they will always be bound to those fixed positions. So we're doing essentially like we're doing this thing where we're creating the layout, and immediately doing this thing where we're creating the set immediately when the game starts. And that means that like 90% of the materials, probably even like 99 if I'm being completely honest, 99% of the materials can just use these standard samplers, because you know we have all the sort of classical ones. Where was it? Standard sampler bindings right here, you know. So point sampling, linear sampling, and anisotropic sampling, a few versions of it. Shadow map, height map has like a special one. This is arguably the only slightly special one. I don't remember exactly why I have that, but I can add more. And because we create the binding set at the startup, we don't do a whole lot of this stuff, this allocating descriptors at runtime, right? So this has been like the largest, most nasty thing for me, because like my engine was so, and still is, to be honest, so sort of structured around the D3D12 idea that like, oh yeah, you just bind things to slots and off you go. This is a very good solution. Well, thank you. I hope it is. When I worked with DX11, I always thought, why we need to create new samplers every time if we can make them global and bind them as needed? Yeah. I have not worked on such extensive systems. Yeah, there might be some even more powerful things that you can do. Like one of the things that I like about NVRHI, and I'm gonna actually show you, because one of my other big problems is related to this. It's not NVRHI's fault, but it just happens to be related to that. But one of my favorite things about NVRHI is the fact that like you can actually call functions on the graphics API under the hood, right? And that might allow you to do some even more sort of elegant solutions. Like for example, Vulkan has a concept of what's it called? It's called like static samplers. Is it called static samplers? Yeah. I don't know what this is. Oh, those GPU web. GPU web. Huh. It's interesting. Maybe it's some like precursor to web GPU or something. Anyway, Vulkan OS allows defining immutable samplers in VK descriptor set layout binding. So you can actually you can create samplers sort of like you don't need to bind in a classical way. And that might be one thing that you know could be even more effective than creating like a set up front. But I don't think NVRHI exposes like static samplers yet. I might be wrong, but at least for like D3D, if I want to do it, you know, because keep in mind that I want to maintain compatibility with D3D11 currently. So that's why I need to jump through some hoops to do this. You might not, need to do that. You might just be fine with only supporting D3D12 and Vulkan with NVRHI, in which case you can probably simplify some of these things. Oh, let's see. I have some more comments here. Creating descriptors on the fly is quite an interesting task. In DX11 you don't think about it. Yeah, exactly. Everything is much simpler. Yeah, the D3D11 driver and or runtime probably did something slightly similar under the hood, but like you certainly didn't ever have to think about it. I think a lot of things how to do in the library and not how it is actually arranged. I learned that NRI uses more approach to API from Vulkan than from DH. I guess that's DirectX. Yeah, I think NRI is more sort of native to Vulkan in that sense. Yes. I think I need to brush up on my knowledge on DX12 and Vulkan and then go to NRI. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't think NRI is bad at all. I haven't really followed up on that in a way, or in some time. Let's see, and GitHub probably. Last week, it is at least still being updated. Oh, it actually supports D3D11. Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. I thought it didn't actually do that, but that's okay. That's cool. Yeah, another reason why you might want to use NRI over NVRHI is that this is a C library, I think. So if you want to use it from other languages than C++ might be easier. Like NVRHI is decidedly like C++ library. Through and through. And of course I do a lot of stuff in Zig, but I have sort of like the renderer is all C++. And I think actually let's see if we look for NVRHI, I think there's like a this one. If you are considering, I'm gonna post this in the chat here for you if you want to take a look. Maybe you've seen that already, but here you have someone from NVIDIA actually sort of laying out the differences between those two, so might be worth a look. Right. So one more thing that I had issues with, and this is not NVRHI's fault at all, but it was an issue that I had with D3D12, and it was stupid and it was annoying, and it took some time to figure out what it was. And I figured it out today. That's how recent this is. So I'm using. Oh, this is NVRHI. I don't want to run this. No. What is it actually compiling now? It's even failing at something. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's close that. Bye-bye. I'm actually even gonna do this, because I bet I somehow screwed that up now. I actually need to update my NVRHI library. It has received some updates. Anyway, so I use HBAO Plus for my AO, which is a screen space AO solution from NVIDIA. It's pretty old at this point. It's not really state of the art anymore, but it works pretty well, and it is what I'm using. So go here, for example, let's go indoors here where we have a lot of like occlusion like this. You can sort of see the difference here with and without. Control and brake stops compiling. Yes, I know. I could have absolutely, and you can even do it from here. Well, it doesn't show it here. It's just that I actually haven't compiled NVRHI on this machine, and I think I'm lacking some Git sub modules on it, so I have it pre-compiled on another machine, and I just use it, sort of vendor it myself. But yes, you're quite correct in that I could have stopped that. Anyway, SSAO. I have my own kind of crummy SSAO as well, which you can use as a fallback. This is implemented completely in NVRHI because this is sort of like part of my own renderer. But then I'm using this HBAO Plus, which does a whole lot more, and it even does like large scale AO, like you can see behind this. If I toggle this on and off, it handles like large scale details much better than like my own. I can't even really see. You can just see a little bit of difference here on the right with my own. But HBAO does like a whole bunch of things. So I kind of like this, even though it's pretty old at this point. And HBAO has a D3D11 and a D3D12 backend, or a runtime library, whatever you want to call it actually. But they don't work directly with NVRHI. So what I had to do is use NVRHI's ability to get the native objects. So here we have HBAO plus context D3D12 render AO. And what you can do is, if you have a command list, this is an NVRHI command list, you can get the ID3D12 graphics command list, like the native type, from the NVRHI type like this. We also have an input depth texture, which is an NVRHI texture, and you can get the type to the ID3D12 resource like that. And this is super powerful. I use this on the D3D11 side as well. So here's the D3D11 side of the coin. It's almost like a mirror, essentially here. Device context and the depth texture, and then we pass these guys. I think we actually assign it to mdepth texture here, but then the mdepth texture is passed to, yeah, here we go, mdepth texture SRV. Yeah, create a shader resource view, and then we pass that to the HBAO stuff. And then here we call render AO, and then we're done. So that's pretty neat. And my issue was that the HBAO sample program that comes with HBAO actually has a bug. It's not a bug in the HBAO library itself, but it's a bug in the integration. And it's also not a bug that appears on NVIDIA hardware, which is probably how they missed it. But here, if we go to the Discord, we look at Gamedev. This is something I was just ranting earlier today. So this is what my depth map was looking like. These kinds of super weird artifacts happening. And turns out that the NVIDIA guys forgot a few resource barriers in their integration. And because I based my integration on their sample program, I of course inherited that bug, you know. So the thing that they were missing was like this resource barrier here, and as you can see, this is just raw D3D12 code. This is not something you have to typically do with NVRHI. It handles all of this itself internally. But you can see that if you are actually interfacing with like raw D3D12, then all of a sudden you have to do resource barriers like this. So we're just passing this or transitioning this resource from a depth state to a pixel shader resource, and then here we're rendering the AO, and then we are transitioning back from a pixel shader resource to a depth write. And also on the Discord, I posted here that I actually fixed this. I have a fork of HBAO because, you know, HBAO Plus is essentially like abandoned by NVIDIA at this point. But if you take HBAO Plus, you can see here, this is my fork of it, but it's forked from NVIDIA GameWorks HBAO Plus. If you take this HBAO Plus and you compile it locally, and then you run it on D3D12 with an AMD card, it's gonna look like this, having these artifacts everywhere. So yeah, it's broken. And because this is kind of silly, and I've had to deal with it today, that's one reason why I've been sort of like fed up with this D3D12 business. But this is of course not NVRHI's fault at all. I saw how many libraries you have stored on your D drive. What is your approach to organizing libraries? How do you update them? I typically vendor them myself, if that is indeed the correct term. I don't use VK package, or what is it called? VC. I know what you mean. I've never used it, so I don't exactly even remember what the name is. But yeah, I don't use like the Visual Studio packaging thing. Yeah, I have like an environment variable pointed to this folder here, so this path. Currently I'm building the engine using Visual Studio 2019. I already have 2022 here, like bought and everything, and I've done some stuff with it, but I don't use it for this project yet. And so these are all the 2019 libraries that I use, but I have like a few different versions of these guys. Here's like 4 different physics versions, for example. And this one I actually just added today. And this one I just added on stream. We can actually just get rid of that bye-bye. Except apparently we can't, because it's probably used somewhere. That's annoying. But anyway, yeah, a lot of these I actually don't use, or if I use, I use it like one version tops. But I typically build them and then put them into SVN. I keep all my data in SVN, not Git. And then I basically deploy them by hand. And then what I do is I go into CMake, because I use CMake for my project generation. So here I have 2015, which is not used anymore, and we have OS X, which is, well, currently doesn't really work because I moved to NVRHI and I can't use Metal with NVRHI, so it's in theory not really used anymore. But we have 2019 for the tools, and we have 2019 for the runtime. And here we have essentially all of the like libraries that the engine will use. So if I have like, what should we look at? let's look at NVRHI. Stay on topic here. Some of these are like not used in this particular game. Like I have Fmod here, for example. Fmod is actually not used by this game, but it's used by another game that's using the same engine. And we have like OS animation, which is sitting by the flag, which I currently don't use. AVG CPP is not used by this. Steamworks is currently not, but this will be used very soon. HBAO VEC is not used by anything currently, but whatever is still there. Tracy, some WASM stuff. Here's NVRHI. So this is how I kind of hook it into my system. We have the base library, NVRHI. Then we have the D3D11, D3D12, and I even have the Vulkan library here, even though I don't actually use that currently. There's no integration for that yet. And there might not be, because D3D12 is working so well. So basically you tell it static imported, which means that like CMake won't try to like compile it or download it or anything. This imported in particular tells you that like that, you know, it's already set up, don't worry about it. And here's this environment variable that I spoke about. So we have the lib2019 path, which points to that folder, and then I just have like the include folder, and then I have 3 different configurations. So debug, release, and final. They just happen to like point to the same library here. But some of these have like different versions. HBO Plus, for example, has like a debug library, and then it has the release libraries. And yeah, this is the DX11 one, then we have the DX12 one. So yeah, that's how I hook my libraries into the thing. It's probably not the most efficient way, but at least like I control the whole chain. I don't depend on anyone's servers except my own SVN server. But I don't depend on anyone's servers to like download the versions or whatnot. And then I just, you know, update these manually when I need to. That's kind of how it works. But yeah, I'm not necessarily suggesting that you do it that way. But library management in C++ is a little hairy anyway, always, in my opinion. There's really no sort of standard way of doing it. Right. Is there something else maybe? I of course also started with DXBC shaders. Again, sort of like depending on how you want to, what graphics APIs you want to support, you need to think about, you know, your shader runtime format. Possibly even your shader sort of like text format. I do everything with HLSL these days. That works pretty fine actually. But my shaders actually contain shader program. Oh no, not that shader program. Description. So this is essentially a shader at runtime in the engine. You can see it's a serializable type. So a shader file is just like a serialized this. And if you're using like the modern materials, so these kinds of materials, they actually like contain one of these things like embedded into the material itself. But this thing has a bunch of per language structs, per language data. And the per language data, as you can see here, well, first of all, we have like a runtime language type. So we have DXBC is the direct 3D bytecode. DXIL is the new D3D12 bytecode. And now, of course, D3D12 is apparently moving to SPIR-V. Not sure how usable that is yet. But we also have SPIR-V. We have metal shading language and WGSL for web GPU. I've actually just disabled them to make the shaders a little smaller because I'm not really using those right now. But they do work. You can generate metal shading language and even WGSL from HLSL, believe it or not. You just need to run it through some converters. But yeah, we have like a source shader source language type and then a shader runtime language type. And the source language for me is always HLSL, but I have like GLSL, MSL, WGSL here as well, because in theory you might be able to use those as well. Anyway, and then we go back to this shader program description. You have this per language data. Per language data contains a bunch of containers, so you have like all of the shader types. In my case, just the standard ones, no fancy mesh shaders or anything. But you have vertex, hull, domain, geometry, pixel, and compute shaders. And then they contain some bytecode typically. And also the source code if you want to look at it. What actually went into compiling this thing. And I compile all three of those just so that I can use the same shader blob with all three graphics APIs, so DX11, 12, and Vulkan, even though I don't currently do Vulkan. But yeah, this is a whole thing, and one part also in making D3D12 work nicely is to enable this DXIL, which I didn't used to have before because I didn't have anything that consumed it. And I bet that is one reason why the game runs better on AMD hardware now. Things like the Steam Deck on D3D12. Because the old shader compiler is sort of like notoriously, you know, not very, produces some not very optimized shader code occasionally. And so the DXIL is at least supposedly better. So there, I think that basically covers like most of my headaches. This wasn't meant to be sort of like a rambling, but at least now, if anyone wants to hear about what is it like to take a D3D, mostly D3D centered renderer, port it over to NVRHI, and make it run with one of the newer graphics APIs. What kind of things do you run into? And these are the kind of things they run into. And it's by no means like necessarily done yet, or still. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that like loading times are a little slower on D3D12, but then once it's actually loaded, it tends to run better. So maybe there's some things to do there. There are some things, of course, in the NVRHI API, which how do I get to the source the easiest way? Maybe just render a CPP like here. So there's things like heaps. For example, you can create a heap disk. If you have a device, you can create a heap, and then out of that heap you can, or into that heap, shall we say. I think it's iHeap, yeah, bind texture memory. You can create things like a bunch of textures into a heap. You can also do the same thing with buffers. So that's one thing that I might want to still do to make it sort of faster and more efficient, to just like load all the textures for a level. Not necessarily all of them, but like most of them. Load all the textures for the static geometry for a level and do that by just creating a heap that's just large enough for that and then just plonking them in there. That might be faster. But again, I can do that actually if I use D3D, if I target D3D11. So again, one of those reasons why I can't quite make the renderer as efficient as it could be without the D3D11 dependency. I think at least that create heap isn't supported on D3D11. Let's make sure. Yeah, not supported. So not yet, but maybe someday. Maybe someday. And yeah, there's some other stuff here apparently that's not supported by D3D11. And of course you have things like, you know, ray tracing, hardware ray tracing, which is not supported by D3D11. Also bindless is not supported, and so on. So might be able to use some of those in the future. Anyway, I hope this gives a better idea of the stuff that I've dealt with over the past few days and months even. But yeah, I think we're hopefully pretty much done with this sort of graphics API level crap for a little while now. I have enough to do on the game itself, and I want to get back to making the game itself. But it is possible that, like, in a day or two, or a week or two, or a month or two, I realized, oh, all right, I hit another one of these, you know, resource limits or something. I mean, I didn't initially hit that descriptor heap issue. Because these levels aren't very, very large. And actually the first time I hit it, I think it was when I just resized the window like this. Because when you resize the window, you have to recreate some textures, which means that you have to recreate some descriptor sets. And well, long story short, if you do that, if you did it like I think in the beginning, if I just did it like once or twice, it just crashed immediately. Now you essentially can't really crash it by doing that. I should also perhaps mention that I have this other game, which you may have seen on some of my older videos. This is Project Slide. And this is running on the same engine. And just run new game here. This is a level which probably has like the most, because it uses some of the same visuals from the current game. So this level is the one that probably has like most objects out of any level that they uses this game engine, right? So this level didn't even like you couldn't even just play this level on D3D12 before the sampler heap restructuring. So you can see there's a little bit of stuttering here. This is on a 2060, so it's a pretty old graphics card at this point, but of course 2060 should be able to run a game like this, no problem. But yeah, I think like the sort of maybe way this level is set up is not the most efficient, so It has something like 30,000 objects, which is kind of crazy because it doesn't really look like it. It isn't the editor. It might not actually have 30,000 here in the runtime. But yeah, this now kind of happily runs on D3D12 as well, and that's kind of neat. I didn't really have to, you know, change any code for this game at all because it's using the same renderer as Traction Point. And so, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic that this is going to work out. Let's see if can we actually crash this game by resizing the window. Oh, I can't resize the window here. Okay. Well, we're not gonna do that then. I'm watching your videos since you tried to make a Vulkan renderer by yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Then you will have actually seen this game. That video series was covering this particular game. There's very, very, very poor combat in this game. There is actual combat here. Especially like the AI is super bad. That's kind of like the reason I stopped working on this, because I just couldn't figure out. Or I could probably figure out how to make good AI, but I realized that like I can't make a game like this on my own. And yeah, here's Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A. Bad AI. That thing is just like stuck in the ditch. Boom. But yeah, yeah, this now runs like significantly better than the Vulkan renderer from that video series ever did. So that's something. Never ran this well at all. Neither did the web GPU one, though it did run a little better than this, I should say. Where's that other guy? Where is that other guy? Oh, there he is. Surprise him with our railgun. Boom. Oh yeah, I've tried to keep this game running as well. There are some even older games using this engine, but I kind of drew the line at this one because this is kind of useful in the sense that this has a level that is almost fully decorated. So it's a pretty good sort of use case for checking that the engine runs well enough. Anyway, maybe that's enough rambling for today. What do you think? Do you have any more questions that I can semi quickly answer, or not semi quickly? If you have any more questions, then shoot. If not, I think we will be wrapping this up soon. Like I said, I got the remaining D3D12 work, or shall I say menu-related graphics API work done during this stream, so that's kind of nice. And I can start working on something else tomorrow, and I think actually that might be something completely different, like, well, I don't even know. I don't know yet. Something. We can play through this mission here. This some sort of bare bones mission. Where's that guy? Where's Diego? Come on, Diego. Yeah, the AI in this... Oh, there he is. This is kind of cool, actually. This is something that I'm sort of proud of, even though it kind of occasionally breaks. Like, you can... That thing is scripted to follow you. But of course, like, it can't be scripted, like, where to actually drive. It's just scripted to follow you, so he tries to follow you as well as possible, and actually manages quite well in many cases, as you can see. And the AI also drives by issuing that. It drove into a rock there. The AI also drives by issuing, like, you know, commands to the actual car. No, I don't know what happened. Oh, there we go. Hello. Like applying the brake and the throttle and turning the wheel and all of that. It was pretty fun. But yeah, I don't think this guy makes... Does he make like reverse turns? I don't remember. Maybe. Maybe they do. At least in Traction Point they do. The driving AI in Traction Point is much better than this game. But it's pretty good here as well. It's kind of surprisingly good even. Alright, so here if we drive here, there's gonna be one more enemy. There he is. Now Diego is gonna shoot him. There we go. Boom. What do you do for a living? I make games for a living. I've been in the games industry since 2009. But for the past 5, 6, I don't remember exactly, years, I've been doing it sort of part-time, and the rest of the time I've been doing this Madrigal stuff, which is mostly game dev, but also a little bit of like non-game development. Where's that guy now? Come on. Look at him go. It's actually like surprisingly good at driving these AIs sometimes. But yeah, I am a programmer at a games company, so this is not just sort of stuff I picked up on my own. Just starting my journey, finished my master's degree. It's very interesting. That's cool. Congratulations. I don't have a master's degree. I only have a bachelor. I've been thinking about maybe getting one, but how do you manage to combine work and projects and burnout? I burn out, for sure. One way is to take breaks, and that's basically why I have been away for like about a month. Right? So yeah, I burn out just like everyone else. Also helps to have a forgiving family and wife. But yeah, it's not easy. It helps if you're super stubborn. You know, I worked on Traction Point for 2 years now, right? On this thing, and sometimes it feels like, you know, I just do this, you know, out of spite. I work on this game out of spite to everyone who says I can't do it. Because I'm just stubborn like that. That's not really true though, but sometimes you have to kind of think of it that way. You just go like, nah, I'm gonna show them. And if it helps you get your work done, then great. Anyway, dudes, and dudettes for that matter, I'm gonna call it a night today. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks to Nikita in particular. It's nice to have a discussion about these things. Maybe someone else will find it interesting to see all of the things that you have to kind of do to work with NVRHI. It's a super nice library, an API. But it doesn't like give you automatically. It doesn't just make it automatically work with the different graphics APIs. You have to do quite a lot of work yourself. But I still think it's really super awesome. Do join the Discord if you think this is cool. You can join the Discord to play the pre-alphas. Or you can join the Discord to hang out and talk about game dev, or music, or games, whatever. It's been a little slow on the Discord now over the summer, probably because I just haven't been around to just yap about things. But I'm kind of confident that will pick up again now that I'm back. And if you want to use NVRHI for your own projects and you want to, get help on some things, I might be able to help on some things. I'm not a super experienced graphics programmer or anything, but the easiest way to reach me is just by joining the Discord. Link is in the description as well as in the chat over there. And like I said, you can play the pre-alpha too if you join the Discord. So that's that. Have a good morning, day, evening, and night, everyone. See you in the next stream.